United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. For meeting minutes, we have the August 7th. They came out probably a week ago, right? Did everybody get a chance to review them? Anybody have comments?
I will.
Okay.
I'd already given them to you.
Okay.
Page 2, 4E. Yeah. Mr. Bergman reminded the members in order to the town to approve Mr. Zimmerman as an SME. And then we go down below, which call he moved, advise the selectmen approve Zimmerman as an SME for scope and work under consideration. And I had asked it to be changed to an addendum to act as an advisor for the presentation, because we haven't voted the contract yet. So I'm trying to
Okay.
just get the technical.
Okay.
You got that?
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
So I'll move you accept the minutes with addendum, with correction.
Second?
All those in favor of approving the minutes for August 7th, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The other thing is, did anybody see the April 30th and May 1st came out? They were sent out earlier this week. April 30th and May 1st, those are the last two we have, and those were for the public presentation and the rehearsal. So there wasn't much substance to them, it was just all about the presentation.
It's all real rehearsal.
Yeah. So we can knock those off if anybody feels we can now, and then we'll be all caught up on our meetings, our minutes.
Okay, motion to approve? Second?
There's been a motion made and seconded to approve the meeting minutes of April 30th and May 1st. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, well, we are caught up, and I'd just like to say how pleased I was when I got those meeting minutes for the first time. They were just what we wanted. I had very few edits before I sent them out, and I thought they did a great job with those. Is there anything from committee? Any members have any updates?
Well, I'd like to put it off to the next meeting if we could. Sorry for the members, since we've got other stuff to do.
Do you have some recommended agenda item?
Yeah, I have an agenda that we talked about open meeting laws.
Okay. I know there was some discussion, and I did review the open meeting law a little bit, so maybe we can get a printout of the guideline for everybody, and we can kind of talk about that.
I'll get them, but everybody that was new, you've got it, I have it, because we're on the committees.
Yeah.
I checked with Diane, and they were handed a copy when they responded.
Okay.
So I'll ask Diane to give me we could do one of two things, we get more copies, or we could ask Diane to come out and give us a 15-minute presentation. On the open meeting, she's done that before. So we just decide what we want to do.
Okay. Peter, do you have anything?
This time.
Okay. Steve?
Nope.
All right. The only thing I have is that I am going to, I realize that I've become a little bit of a lightning rod in this town. Some of the letters to the editor have been pretty pointed, and some comments and things like that, and some of the ways I've been received at other places. So I think it's in the interest of the committee that I step down as chair, and I'm going to put reorganization on for the agenda for next meeting. I think it'd be nice to get someone else a chance too. It's been 2 years that we've been at this, so it'd be nice to.
Saddle somebody else with that, huh?
Yeah, yeah. So that's what we're going to put on for next time. And now we have 20 minutes to go. I know one thing we talked about before was the Pledge of Allegiance, whether or not we wanted to start with that. It was voted in at one point. Do you want to have that discussion now, or wait till more committee members?
I think we'll wait. You know, we wanted to make sure a couple of other people were here for that.
But we did vote it in, right?
So far it's in, yeah.
And it wasn't a question of whether to vote in or not. It was a process of
Right.
how we went about it.
Okay. Ken, I do have your frequently asked questions here. I haven't got a chance to look at them yet. Have you done any more editing to them, or are you waiting in?
I'm waiting for feedback.
Okay.
So
Um,
I can send a reminder out to everybody for
Yeah.
feedback, and particularly Warren.
Well, yeah.
He's
Well, he's already looked at it once, right?
He has, he put everything together, and I went back through and did my editing and sent him suggestions for the way I thought it should be, and I was anticipating getting back from him. Whether he agreed or disagreed, and we'd kind of hash it out from there.
Okay.
Um,
I'll take a look,
so
I'll try to
see
take a
what he
look.
says.
Yeah. I'll try to take a
beach
look
reading.
too, and let's, yeah, what's that?
It's good beach reading, bring it to the beach with you.
It was printing off all sorts of stuff on soccer drills today, so I'll just throw this right in,
Yeah,
like
right.
soccer drills and everything. Because it'd be nice to get that up, and if we can kind of start the new, it's almost like new
I'd like to have
legislative
it in,
season
yeah.
starting.
So I think September is when people are gonna start really re-engaging, so.
Right.
If it's there for beginning of September would be good.
Well, with that, we can schedule our next meeting too.
We're gonna go back to our second and fourth, or what?
First and third it was, I believe.
First and third, okay.
Yeah.
That would be the fourth and the 15th.
Is that, when's that holiday, whatever one's there, Labor Day or whatever,
Third.
when's that fall?
Third.
We all agree on that, Ted?
Yes.
So, you want to start the Tuesday after Labor Day, the fourth, we're going to go to that?
Yeah.
So for September, we'll go to September 4th and 18th. Do you want to look out to,
Wanna go
you
further?
want to go just October 9th? Oh, wait, 1st and 3rd, you said?
First and third Tuesdays of each month.
October 2nd.
You want to go October 2nd and 16th then too? If, you know, as necessary?
September what, 4th?
Yes, September 4th and 18th. We're going to move back to 7:30 as well?
I like the 7 time, it doesn't, 7:30 starts to relax too much.
Yeah, okay.
And October 2nd.
So 7?
7 o'clock? Yeah.
Extremely appropriate.
Why?
My birthday.
Is it? Oh, jeez, we'll have to have a call, have to have a short meeting that day and go out for a drink, huh?
No, we'll get you a cake.
September 4th and what, 18th?
Yes,
Yeah.
18. No gifts over 55.
No problem with it. And these will all be backed into room 307 also.
Did you get that, Peter? We'll be back at Town Hall, room 307 for the next meetings?
For the next meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So 4th and 18th, and then and again in
second, 16th.
second and 16th?
Yeah,
Okay.
October, room 307. Ted, you can make it. What are you doing? Reading the book?
Yeah.
When you're done, I got a suggestion.
Yeah. Repeat.
Second and the 16th, right, in October.
Every 2 weeks, Tuesday.
How's it down that end of the table?
Very good. Waiting for Ted to finish with his fat thumbs over there.
Why, you got something else? No, you want, unless you guys want to start early with
Let me
the,
just give you a suggestion.
what's that?
You can put, you know roughly what we're gonna talk about on the 4th. right?
Yeah.
So you can put an agenda into the channel, it's an agenda now. Tell them to post it so we don't forget. to
Yeah,
post it.
yeah.
And you can always add to the agenda.
Right.
Howdy.
Evening.
Okay?
Yep.
Now, you might take attendance of people here.
Yeah, if you're here, we'd like you to sign in when you're either coming or going at some point. I think I remember this guy at all.
It's
Is
right
there a
over
sheet
there.
over there?
Yeah, it's right there, yeah.
How you doing?
Pen?
They go in there? Bob, do you have anything? I didn't come back to you.
You want your movie spot?
Anything?
No, other than, we made presentations in Sherburne and Rentham, and, the night of the presentations, both cities, both towns signed up to do sewer feasibility studies, smart sewer feasibility studies.
Right on the heels of us then. So they're where we were a year ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. How similar are they?
The first flyby is pretty high, 30,000 feet or so.
Yeah.
And 2 or 3 months out, they'll make a determination as to whether they want to do a full analysis.
They have the same ballpark range? $100,000, are they gonna?
Sherburne's smaller.
Yeah,
Their downtown area, such as it is pretty limited. Rentham actually has two areas. They have an area on Route 1A, which is a bunch of outlet malls right now,
Yeah.
right in a big water park. And then also their downtown area is fairly constrained, so we're gonna look at both.
What type of system? Something similar to this, or they?
Yeah, limited districts, energy producing. Sherburne is a little interesting in that the energy production, wastewater is a resource. You gotta have some tonnage to begin with, right? And they're fairly small. So it'll be interesting to see how big the district is. They also have a series of buildings that are outside the district, so they're considering, we'll look at force mains as a possibility of hooking some of those up, that sort of thing.
They're pretty much spread out too.
Yeah, but they're very concerned about that. They wanna,
well, they don't have good soil down there either. Sherborne?
sure, sure, the Charles is about 45% good soil,
Yeah.
just as a general
Right.
flipping coin rule. Depending on where you are, so, it depends on the first flyby, what we see in terms of locations and discharge sites and that sort of thing is sort of a general
Yeah.
sliding scale.
Ted, can we
It's
get?
interesting though, I mean, they went for it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
We also talked to Stowe, but I don't have any money left, so
Mhm.
Stowe was out.
So then
Can we
we're
wait
going,
until 7:30, Ted, or can we ramp up now, or?
might as well, sure. We're starting, Steve, yes?
So do we wanna,
Yeah.
tell the people who are here that?
Yeah, right, well, I'll introduce right now, we have from Weston Sampson going to give the first presentation. We have Steve Peterson and Kent Nichols, both known with the company for quite some time, that I know firsthand, and you guys can take the floor.
Sure. I did a,
Do we want to move?
Hey, I'm gonna go sit down over there, so.
I got a PowerPoint on Bruce's machine, so Bruce, does it just shoot on this?
Does, Vera, does everyone know what the presentation's about, Vera?
Oh,
Anybody?
oh.
You wanna,
Okay. So we there's a few contracting options for the way you can design and build a sewer treatment system. The typical way is gonna be a design, bid, build, where you go through and you pay upfront for all the design, send it out to bid, and somebody builds it. And then there's the operate also, which there's a few different options. Then there's also the design, build, where you hire one engineering construction firm that they'll do both. So what we're here tonight is to hear the opinions of other professionals who have done this, because really on this committee, we don't have extensive experience with that. And we've been debating it for quite a few months on which way we're gonna go, and I think it's time to end the debate and make a decision. So we brought them in to give us an overview and help us make a decision on which way we're gonna go with this.
And just a point to clarify, I think, Ted, the design, bid, build, the way I understand it is Littleton's gonna pay for a design to be done, and then Littleton will be responsible for going out and getting bids for whatever particular phase to be done, and then it would be built. And the other, just to summarize the other way, is we hire somebody and they do all of that. Was that right?
Yeah, well, then
Okay.
we'll get a much more thorough understanding now.
But quick, we're gonna be quick, so.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, thanks Ted and the rest of the committee. I don't know which way to face it. I need to be
Don't worry
here,
about
Mike,
me.
if you want to hear me.
Yeah.
So again, thanks for inviting us to participate in this discussion. It's a very big decision for the town and this committee. As Ted said, my name is Steve Peterson. I'm with Weston and Sampson Engineers. With me is Ken Nichols, also with Weston and Sampson. And as Ken started to say, we put together a very brief presentation just to kind of give you a background on who we are, so you can understand where we're coming from in the discussions, and then talk a little bit about our understanding of what you're up against and our experiences and thoughts on that. And then really we want to be there for question and discussion and whatever open discussion you want to have. So as far as Weston and Sampson itself, we're a locally owned Massachusetts family of companies. We're headquartered in Peabody, Mass. Kent and I are both out of the Peabody office, but we have quite a presence in New England, now actually up and down the East Coast. We've been growing over the last 10 plus years. We've been serving Massachusetts communities for over 100 years now, so pretty well established. And really, although we've branched into a lot of services through the years, the backbone of Weston and Sampson is our water resource protection between wastewater and water consulting and engineering. One thing a little bit unique about us, unusual blend of capabilities within the Weston and Sampson name. We're a family of companies. We have several companies within that. We have the engineering consulting company, which Kent and I are part of. And that's again what we were founded on. But since, as time has progressed, we've advanced into some other areas. One of them is what we call our CMR division. They do actual construction, maintenance, and repair. Those are the guys that are 24/7 on call to help municipalities and other clients with any problems that they have, as well as most recently we've gone into the construction area. We also have an operations division, Weston and Sampson Services, and they basically operate water treatment plants, wastewater treatment plants, as well as just general water and wastewater systems, pump stations, and the like. So it gives us, it gives us a lot of resources internally and all the things that you're talking about here tonight, I think, as far as procurement of a project. So within these family companies, we have the ability to design, build, and operate. We have that capacity within these companies, and we provide a lot of assistance to municipalities in procuring and managing DBO projects. So in terms of your specific project and the goals, we've taken a look at the report and where you're headed with your smart sewering for the limited service area. We see the district approach to limiting the extent of the sewer service, pretty typical of these downtown areas, and then the project phasing to control the project financial commitments. It's quite a balance that you're trying to strike here. It's something that we're pretty familiar with. So the thing that you're really faced with right now or ready to discuss is your project delivery options. How's Littleton going to move forward with actually getting something done? So you get your traditional contracting of design. You hire a design engineer, they go out and design it, you put it out to bid, and you secure a contractor to build it. Alternative delivery is a design-build process where you put a package out that one entity is going to bid on the design and construction of that project. Another alternative is to take that to another level where you procure a firm that's going to design, build, and operate it. And then you've got other facets like construction manager at risk, contract operations, O&M. These are all the considerations that go into it. And at that, I think I'm probably going to pass it over to Kent, and he's going to go into a little more detail on each of these delivery methods, and then we'll open it up.
As a rule, you could spend hours talking about any one of these delivery methods. And because you have Charles River and Natural Systems Utility folks as your consultants, maybe you already have done that. I don't know if you've done a great amount of it. So we're just gonna hit a couple of high points of a few of these things and give you a couple of thoughts that we have based on our experience. I think the traditional thing that people call the conventional way, plain old way of doing things has always been done in Massachusetts, which is you decide you're gonna do a project, you then hire an engineer. You bring an engineer in to help you do that project. That engineer helps you envision it, comes up with a design, you create very detailed drawings, you talk about that design back and forth, you tweak it, you put some cost estimates together, you decide exactly what you want from the project. Maybe you pull a few things out and add a few things in, and you reach a point where those documents are very descriptive of what you want to build. And then at that point, you take those documents, you get permits for that work, and you put them out on the street, and you solicit construction bids. This is the process, the traditional process we've always called design bid build. And what it gives you is it gives you maximum amount of control over the final product that you're going to have. The intent of it is to give very specific directions to a set of contractors so that a broad group of contractors can give you competitive bids. It's specifically designed to give you competitive bids with the intent that everybody's bidding on giving you the same product. The intent is to give you fair competition, at the same time give you a high degree of control over the process. It takes extra time, to some degree it takes some extra money to do it, but the traditional method was selected that way because of some of those strengths. And it does give you a lot of time, for instance, to secure things like your financing, get the folks that are financing the project on board and comfortable with it. You can go through public meetings and talk about what you want to change in the design as you go. One of the big things on projects like yours that we deal with is if you've got vertical components, what will pump stations look like, what will treatment plants look like. You can tune those things with the public in the traditional design build process. And it gives you those opportunities to continue to tune it until you put it out on the street. And then, design bid build. And once you put it on the street, you then start to get involved with a contractor who brings his own piece of the process together. Just a couple of quick thoughts on this. The advantages, disadvantages. It's always been a traditional method, so there aren't really any restrictions on it in the Mass General laws from a procurement standpoint. It does give you pretty good control over the quality of the project. It gives you, if you execute it properly, it gives you pretty good control over things like timing within reason. And it does give you a great competition amongst contractors because it opens the pool when you get out to the bidding climate to a lot of contractors who are going to bid for you. Disadvantages are it takes more time usually. And it takes away some of the creativity that some of those contractors and construction professionals can use in helping to find ways to do your project cheaper. So the knock on traditional design bid build has always been, hey, I can't use my creativity as a construction manager or as a contractor or my knowledge of how to do something better because the engineer is constrained to me doing something a certain way. And you become overly prescriptive in what you're asking the contractor to do. You kind of lose that ability to do those things. Either way, and I think this is consistent with all of these things, at the end of a traditional design bid build process, you still have a facility to operate. And so a consistent message here when you don't do what we're going to talk about is design build operate is you always have the need to come back and come up with an operation scheme for your facility. Because what you're talking about building is pipelines and pump systems and some degree of a treatment facility, depending upon where you go with your final selection. And those things have requirements for day-to-day operation, and you're going to have licensed operators that deal with those things. So traditional design bid build leaves you with a whole separate process to go out and select an operator. Be that municipal employees, if you want to establish a department to do that, and many communities do that, or contracting that operations out. Contract ops is a more popular thing now. As Steve said, we have a contract ops wing that we've only had in place for, I don't know, 15 years or something like that. So the quick change to that is they changed the Massachusetts general laws to allow this to be more like what private construction has always allowed. And that change was to something that is termed design build. And design build allows you to kind of meld the design and construction process together and get kind of joint responsibility and joint action of the designer and the builder, so that they're focused on efficiency. And generally that's what you get when you get a design build approach. You dictate what you want for a process in general. You put together a little package and you put it out on the street, and you have proposals come in, and instead of having a designer that's separate from a builder, you have a designer. You know, Steve and I design projects. It's one of the things we do. We would be on a team with a contractor, and you'd come in and we'd say, this is what we want to build you, This is how much it's going to cost, and this is what it's going to look like. And teams compete like that, and they'll bring you teams that are a paired engineer in support of a construction contract firm. Like design bid build, traditional design build usually omits operations. And operations can be done as a separate approach. You can procure that separately, and again, you can use your own forces or you can do it as a privatized approach. Design build is allowable under the Massachusetts general laws at this point with certain restrictions, and you do need to get permission from the IG's office. And I think in the range, and this might be where you folks are a little bit ahead of us because we haven't worked with you, I think in the range of what you've been discussing, you're talking about a district approach anyways to control what you're going to sewer. So in that thought process, I'm assuming you've already talked about the fact that you're going to get home rule petition and legislative approval. That process already being needed, there really aren't a lot of excess processes needed to go get those extra approvals that you would need, even if it wasn't already provided for in the Mass laws. But the Mass laws do provide for you, when you have a project in excess of $5 million, to do a design-build approach with permission to do that. And so that's kind of what lays out there. The primary difference in the way the advantages and disadvantages work is you try to shed some cost and schedule. You try to get the schedule to condense and the cost to go down a little bit of efficiency in there. But when you do that, you also shed a little bit of control over the finished product. To the degree that you no longer create that defined package of documents, you now have to give a little bit of the control on what that final product's going to be back to the contractor engineer package. So there's a little bit going there. One of the things, and I did read a little bit, I apologize to Bruce and your firm, didn't read the whole full report cover to cover, but I did read enough of it to get the sense that you had talked a lot about risk and shedding that. And I thought that was a really good discussion because it's really the primary issue when you're talking about the difference between design build, design bid build, and design build operate, is how you handle risk. It's usually the biggest issue that comes up in the procurement. In this case, you can shift risks, particularly cost risks, to the GCs. So that's an advantage. Again, you still have to go out and procure your operations. So the way you do that, sorry, not too fast, is to get around having to procure separate operations is you can then fold the operate in. And now you have what's termed design build operate, DBO, which is the thing that I think you are kind of tracking towards in your process here. Design build operate gives you a complete procurement in one package. It gives you the ability to have an operator that's now part of the team with the designer and the builder, and that operator actually helps to guide the process a little bit better because, as we know since we've had operations in our group, when you have contractors in our group, which we've had, they help us guide us to not building things that can't be built. But when we have operators in our group that help guide us, they help guide us to things that can't be operated, away from things that can't be operated. They're looking at ease of operation and maintenance, and that thought process comes out in this. So the real key here is to have that operation thought process in the team. And you get that with design, build, operate. Now you've got 3 parties in there. The difficulty is it's not always an even balance, and usually one of those parties, the designer, builder, and operator, have to come together, frequently 3 fairly diverse interests, and they have to come to an agreement on what's going to happen. So the risk share becomes a key issue again, and it comes out in how they're going to cost the project. In the case of design, build, operate, it depends a lot on how you structure the operations contract and the size of the construction contract. If it's a big dollar construction contract, but an easy-to-operate, low-cost operations contract, usually the builder is going to be the one who's going to be the driving force there. We've done a couple of recent projects. We've actually just done a really large DBO procurement, just opened this package in the past couple of months and awarded it for a 16 million gallon a day treatment plant. And in that case, we were awarding a 20-year operations contract, so the operating firm became the driving force in that, which was really important to us because what we wanted was a process that would be good to operate, not necessarily good to build. And that's that risk share, again, of trying to drive risk against cost and figure out where it all is. And it really is a difficult balance. Again, the advantages here is you can shift risks to the contractor. You get the advantage of the operations linked in. It is allowed procurement by Massachusetts, and you'll be able to get it through your home rule. The disadvantages are you do, again, shed responsibility, but also some control over what you're actually going to build. Your contractor, even though he has a contract with you, just like all the other contractors, the design bid build, the contractor works for him tries to make the most money he can on the job. Design, build, contractor and engineer work for them. They're going to make the most money they can on the job. Design, build, operate, they don't work for you. They're going to try to make as much money as they can on the job. That's their job. Your job becomes to manage those regardless of how you put them on. So there's always a little bit of downside. The tendency here in this one is to see that the costs, the bigger this gets and the more diverse these groups get, the costs can start to get a little unwieldy because one of the three parties usually comes up wanting to make a little bit more money in the process. And this is this particular process is a little bit of a victim of who's out there bidding these jobs right now. There are firms like Wesson Sampson who can actually respond, and we have for treatment plants very similar in size to what you're proposing. We've responded and won jobs where we were the designer, the builder, and the operator, all in one roof. We're one entity, so we don't have any fighting across the boards with how that works. The job we just awarded for the treatment plant down in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, again, the firm that was successful there is CH2M Hill, one entity. They're the designer, they're the builder, and they're the constructor, and they're the operator. And in that case, you get a little bit better coherence. But most teams you get on projects like this will be a builder that's separate from the operator, and the designer comes in as a kind of a piece in that process. It tends to create a little bit more of a cost reflection when you go to do this. So there's a little bit of thought process needed in there and how you go about that. The considerations you have to get, there's one other one that I didn't talk much about, and it's essentially the same as design, build, operate. And I don't know if you've talked much about it in your process, but it's called construction manager at risk, which is, again, a process very similar to design build, again, allowed by mass laws with specific requirements. Construction manager at risk is a very kind of a new approach. The folks that are using it in Massachusetts really haven't seen it used for a wastewater project of your nature quite yet. It's used in public building projects is the most common one. The public school, the State College Building Commission uses this all the time. They like construction manager at risk. Design build has been used more in wastewater projects in Massachusetts. In fact, in the past few years, the big notable ones that have been done are Plymouth, and then before that, Provincetown were both done with design build. And those are good examples of kind of where you get to with this. So kind of to wrap up, the thought process that you need to have on the delivery considerations is you really need to think about what your approval is going to be and how you're going to use it. In your case, we're going to do district. You're going to go ahead and do that, but you want to wrap your approval when you go to for the legislative approval, wrap it all together and make it work for you. The second one is think about phasing. I put this down as a challenge for design, build, operate, particularly because it is a complexity. One of the keys of the report you put together is you want to try to do 5 phases and spread the costs out over 5 phases. That is challenging to do with design build because you're not going to sign one contract with a contractor who's going to be able to, even if you wanted to, hold his cost for 5 years, let alone 25 years. You're going to have to procure your phases separately. So you're going to have to understand how that works and how, if you're going to have a long-term operating contract, how those additional construction pieces are going to fit with that new operator. Because you're actually going to have to flex your procurement over time for that process. And that's a really important aspect because it's a complexity that if you don't think it through, might actually hurt you in the contract amount that you end up signing with those folks. And then obviously you're going to be working with a sewer district, so you really want to think about how it fits with your financing in general. I think the biggest issue that's left out there that can be somewhat of a misconception is, and the report I think did a good job of trying to touch on this, but I think it's really important to understand is there's a big issue with risk-cost relationship in deciding how you procure information, how you procure construction for a system like this. If your goal is to pass all risk out, you can't also expect that you're going to pay the lowest amount of money. If your goal is to pay the lowest amount of money, you need to absorb risk. You cannot pass all the risk out and get the lowest price. The industry doesn't work that way. Being a firm that's in the business, we can tell you that's a very important aspect in making decisions. We've made decisions on projects very similar to yours where when we look through the way the risk document is written, we look at it and say, we can do this job, we can win it, we can do it cheaper, we can do it better, it'll be the best job that's ever done, we'll write all sorts of great papers and we'll get lauded in the community for having done the greatest job ever, and we can't take the job because we can't sign the risk information. If you push too much on trying to get very low cost and alleviate too much of your risk without taking a little risk on the municipality, what ends up happening is you end up driving away the more reputable firms that will want to bid your project. And you may still get bids, but what you need to be careful of with projects like this is you don't want to only get bids from firms who are desperate to win the work, that either haven't done it before, don't have the capacity to do the work, or they're so desperate to win the work because they need it, or they're going to be out of business. Because you still have absorbed a lot of risk if you get a contractor that can start the job but can't finish it. So the keys to understanding the risks related to costs are a very critical aspect for you folks. And that's really going to be one of the sensitivities you're going to have to live with as you go through the process. I loved one of the conclusions in the report was your report is extremely visionary. It's got all these great thoughts, but I think you point out at the end of it, which was really good, you need to do some more detailed planning. You still have more details that you have to flesh out to get this thing to move forward. So very clearly you need to settle on your district limits, settle on your facility siting, settle on the details of really what you're going to build, and really go back and reconsider how much of that project risk you want to do when you try to make this procurement decision. And I think really the idea of coming back up with that to satisfy the concerns of the community will include things like refining the costs to the point where everyone's real comfortable with them, because deciding the local cost allocation, what it costs to folks, and then being able to bring that out to the community to get acceptance is really the driving force in these projects. And, you know, I'm sure your consulting team's been through that with you before. That's a really critical aspect of this as we go forward. So that's pretty much all we had to say. And I would be willing to take a few questions, or we'll wait for the discussion later on, whatever you think is best.
Well, I want to make a couple clarifications now, that a couple of points that you brought up, that probably things that we've talked about within the committee, but you and the public haven't known. Right now, Natural System Utility is not our consultant. We do not have a contract here for any of for any work for them right now. They're here just like the other three that were invited. They're here to give us their feedback on this. They did write the report, but right now they're not a consultant. But what we're here tonight is just to figure out which way we're going to go, because we know we need those home rule petitions. So we need to finally make a decision to see, are we going to go the way and have to do all this other home rule petition, or are we going to go the traditional way and not have to do this home rule thing, the home rule petition and things like that. And also, I just want to clarify for everybody, this is not an interview. The consultants here are here just for their own goodwill to help us out, and we appreciate them coming. And there is no contract for engineering services out of the bid right now. It's just here for information. So, I don't know, does the committee want to ask, do you have any questions specific to Weston Sampson's presentation?
Let's do them all and then throw it at the end, because they
Okay.
might take something away from someone's presentation.
Okay.
Great.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right. So with that, I don't recognize anyone from CDM, so.
There were guys out in the hallway.
Are they out there?
Why don't you check, give them a
All right.
chance.
Look like detectives.
Let's see.
Oh, yeah, these look like engineers. I mean, you were, Weston Sampson is finished, and you guys, next, if you want.
Sure.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, right up front if you like, and, do you have a presentation or anything you want to?
Nope, we're here to talk.
Okay. Do you want to just sit for a round table, or do you want to give a presentation? Do you want to talk?
It's entirely up to you.
Okay. Floor is yours. Yeah?
Okay. Hey, Dave.
If you have anything you want to tell the committee and tell the
Yeah.
public about your, yeah.
What we're looking for, guys, is to give the public and laymen what design bid, build, and that whole, the building options, so people can best understand that, the types of construction project methods.
Was your goal this evening to try to get a handle on delivery methods?
Yes.
Yeah. So Weston Sam just took us through a few. You want to let Bruce go first so you can kind of get?
Yeah, let's,
Yeah. Yeah. All right, come on, Bruce, you want to give a
Sure.
presentation, then we can have, you guys come back.
you guys
up.
can sit
That's
either
fine.
there
Sure.
or back here.
Most of it
So you
I'll
guys just walk in the door and we throw you right on the stage. So, yeah.
You're just like police detectives, I would have waited a minute.
not a problem. But first of all, I guess the first thing is to say I agree with everything that Kent and Steve said. I mean, they're right on target, so I'll try not to repeat, but instead to re-emphasize a few things. Maybe say it a little differently. Thank you. Take it from the top. Super. Well, basically, Natural Systems Utilities worked with the committee and worked with the Charles River Watershed Association on developing the report that was done. And I really appreciate what Ken said about it, and I think that it's the benefit of the town and the Watershed Association of having that vision of how it came together, and we really were the folks that put it together, but it was really a collaborative approach. Natural Systems Utilities is a design, build, operate, finance firm. We deliver infrastructure, and I'll talk about the types of infrastructure in a minute. We're almost 100 people. We have an office in Fall River, Mass. Our main office is in Hillsborough, New Jersey, and we have an office in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, and one out in Minnesota. We basically we operate, and I guess I'll show you a few systems, but basically about 150 systems in the Northeast, North Central U.S., and in one in Georgia that we just acquired. So we're really at the scale of the Littleton project is where our systems are. We are very focused on less than 1 million gallon per day projects. And we really are, I guess, right in our wheelhouse is a project of this scale. And we also, I'd like to point out early on, is we've been collaborating with Small Water Systems Services of Littleton, with Debbie Trumbull and Bruce Trumbull, who are here in the audience, to expand. We have designers, we have contractors, construction people, we have operation people in-house. What we're seeing, though, is as work in Massachusetts expanding is collaborating with other firms to kind of bring in those resources closer to the projects that we've done the DBO on, and we're looking forward to working with the Small Water System Services more in the future. For 29 years we've been doing these small systems, and what made it really possible was New Jersey had a limitation of sewer capacity, and they found that they could do it with decentralized systems, and were encouraging it. Basically, the state had legislation that enabled design, build, operate to happen at the small scale, which Massachusetts has recently had clarified legislations for the $5 million threshold. If you're greater than $5 million, as Ken said, you don't have to go through the special legislation, but for less than $5 million you do. So guess what? Why am I here? We talked about Natural Systems Utilities. We do design build. We do design build operate. We do design build operate and finance. I'll give you some examples of those. One thing is we rarely do is the design bid build, and that's I think that is key. We've recognized it's not the most efficient for the scale that we work on. It's a viable, it's practical, it has pros and cons, as Kent and Steve have talked about, but it's not our strategy for project delivery. And we'll compare and contrast the two approaches, though, and then hopefully tie it together a little bit for the smart sewering initiatives here in Littleton. So I guess the question is, as you've talked about, why are you here? And really, what's the best project delivery approach? And probably, from your perspective, what's the best project procurement approach? We're delivering it, but you're buying it. So basically, how you go about buying a sewer in a way that fits the needs of Littleton best. And that's what you should be thinking of as you listen. And it really depends. It depends on a lot of variables that Ken and Steve talked about. And the key thing, though, is assigning the accountability. Who's really going to take accountability for which part of the process? And it's also about, I think a lot of people may be here, coming here, just thinking about what are our concerns, what are the fears that we have if we share accountability with another firm, and then to what level should we share it to be feeling confident that we're going to serve the community well, as committee members or as residents, users of the system, or members of the town community. You want to make sure that you're making a good decision for the present and for the future, for the long term, and you really need to think that through carefully. So what our strategy is, and we've done the master plan, but it really is to try to close the loop here. We've worked with the town and the Littleton Common Sewer Feasibility Study Committee on planning. Now you're moving into the design phase, and the important part is to look at it as a way. Once you build it, you can operate it, and then use what you learn back into the planning process. So as Kent pointed out, there's some challenges with having a phased system, but some of the benefits of having a phased system is you could have the feedback loop, and each phase can be an improvement on the previous one, and really end up with a system that is essentially regenerative. This is just an example of design build, operate projects in New England. This is probably less than 20 projects. Again, I mentioned we have over 150 nationwide. And the blue areas, first column is the check marks of design build, and then the second column with blue is operation and maintenance with check marks. So it's probably about 10 in the New England area, and it's probably in order of 50 nationwide of our projects that design build operate. And what's the kind of infrastructure we deliver? Well, it's really water-centric. It's not just wastewater infrastructure, but it's looking at the wastewater as a resource. And how can we basically look at the resource as something that has value, and what can we use it for? There's both energy in water. There's thermal energy and caloric energy in wastewater. There are nutrients. There's the nitrogen and phosphorus. We spend a lot of money sometimes taking them out, but how could they potentially be utilized? And then there's solids that come out of the process that have to be removed, that can be looked at as a resource to create energy. And one little, I don't know if you can see it down here at the bottom, the story of stuff. You haven't seen it, but it's a great video on the web about looking at. So often we accumulate too much stuff and not think about where's it go in the long run. And if we can be more conscious of the longevity, the full life cycle of what we acquire, even if it's the sort of stuff is more about a radio someone buys in a department store, but it also pertains to when you're buying a sewer. You're buying something that really has longevity and reliability and durability. It should be your objective. An example of a design, build, operate project in Massachusetts is Gillette Stadium that we built the wastewater treatment system. Essentially, if you drive up to Gillette Stadium, you see two water tanks. One is potable water, one is non-potable water. And essentially, that non-potable water has been treated, meeting requirements for reuse, and that's what's used to flush the toilets at halftime. And then it goes through the system again and is utilized over again. And there was some distribution into the groundwater discharge, but it enabled the Patriots to stay in Massachusetts because they were able to balance a system that worked with this town of Foxborough's limitations on water supply. And with that, essentially, it's that we are responsible for the system for a 20-year period. We have to pay for parts replacement and operation maintenance. It's a full DBO contract where we assume the risk of making sure that system is functional and operational and for every game day. So and overall, NSU is a B corporation. What we have to do to report to our board of directors is not just a financial bottom line, but we have to show an environmental and a social bottom line to our projects. We have to really evaluate those benefits and make sure that we're not impinging on the quality of the environment, or the economy, or the social aspects of the community in which we work. And we're also always in a process of planning, designing, operating, monitoring, and improving, as I talked about before, within those contexts. Another design build project that we have is one that combines water and energy. It's at a wastewater treatment plant in northern New Jersey. And essentially, we're installing combined heat and power at an existing wastewater treatment plant, as well as photovoltaic panels to make the plant energy neutral. And that also, that particular project is being done at no cost to the town. And that is essentially, we're not building a treatment plant, we're just building the collection of the energy from the treatment system and adding some energy collection components to it. But basically, the town has put no money up front, and they get a lower rate. They get the bioelectricity back from us at a lower rate than they're currently paying, so they'll have a net savings over time. And we'll also share the tipping fees of any additional organic materials we bring in to enhance their anaerobic digestion that creates the methane that we generate the electricity from. So talking about the options for project delivery, a little graphic to build on what Kent said. Basically, design, bid, build on your left is where the owner deals separately with the designer and the builder. And it's a sequential process. The designer first, designer finishes, back to the owner, and the owner goes out to the builder. Construction management and risk is something I won't dwell on tonight. It's another process that Ken talked about. But really, with design build, there's two ways of doing design build. One is a fixed price design build, where you say you've set the criteria for the project, the goals, and you tell the designer, this is what I want, and designers give you the alternatives, the proponents to your RFP give you alternatives and a fixed price for the outcome, and you basically choose which designer's alternatives you want, and then let them go ahead and build it. And it's a bit of an oversimplification, but what we prefer is a progressive design build, where it's basically both parties, both the owner, the community, and the design builder work together step by step, and we build a number of milestones into the process where the community can have an opportunity to provide feedback and make sure the project is going in the direction that they want to. And from that, you end up with the most, I think, custom project that really meets the needs. Now, who are the players? I mean, design, bid, build. You've got the town, you've got the designers, the builders, the operators, and the eventual users. With design, build, operate, you really have three groups. You've got the town, the DBO team, and then the smart sewer users in there. And there's a real opportunity for efficiency in having less players and less steps. So a quick comparison from a timeline standpoint is, with design, bid, build, it's really design, bid, build, bid, operate. And if you notice, and this is something Kent made a great point, that the operation is the longest part of the scale. That's a key of these projects. They're going to keep going, and it behooves the community to be looking at operation early on in the process, as you may get the lowest cost system here, but it may not be the most affordable to operate in the long run, which could have a significant impact on user fees. And then contrasting that to design, build, operate, where you have, you're setting the scope before you bid, but you also, as Ken mentioned, the special legislation, which you may also do with the district up above. You do that both simultaneously, so that doesn't take additional time, but there's some efficiency in the designing and building, because it's by the same team, and then moving into operations. So you end up basically, tend to be a little faster with design, build, operate than design, bid, build. But it's worth kind of looking at the big picture. Just some comparisons of procurement choice relative to cost. And these are just general rules and not exclusive, relative to timing, risk, responsibility, accountability, and relationships. I think a key thing is the relationships. It's often with the design, bid, build, it's the you've got the engineer who's responsible to the town and does a good job of doing a design. Then you have a contractor who's responsible to the town with engineering oversight during construction. But it's a bit, it could be a bit of a tension, some adversarial relationship of well, it's not the most efficient thing, or I had to build it the way it was prescribed. Whereas with design, build, operate, you've got a partnership, you've got built-in collaboration from the beginning, And it also, even with the operations, relative to design, bid, build, and operator have concerns over what was selected for equipment. It's going to cost more because I would have done it more efficiently if I was involved. So the partnership part of the design, build, operate is a key. So how do we keep wastewater management affordable? And Littleton is looking at some of the main objectives of smart sewering: economic development, phasing, resource recovery, design, build, operate. And the motivation really is keep the scale small, make it fit to the community character, concentrate on growth in economic growth in the commercial center, and keeping in mind the social and ecological benefits, issues of transfer, interbasin transfer, putting the groundwater back into the watershed where the water was extracted from. And this concept of not just looking at wastewater, but looking at resources that can be reclaimed, that can offset the cost of the wastewater management, and looking at anaerobic digestion, which is a way of creating energy, methane, that can be used for combined heat and power, potentially looking at reuse opportunities with the system. And again, as Ken mentioned, the concept of phasing. To basically, I like to think of this as just in time, like when they deliver parts to the factory that's building a car, just in time when it's needed, as opposed to having a large warehouse and unused parts sitting idle. Instead, just delivering your wastewater system just in time to when you need that scale, you build it, and then when you need the next scale, you build it, rather than building for 20 or 30 years out and then having to catch up, and meanwhile paying for the whole bit with less users. So the goal is really to close the loop. It's really incumbent on the community to set a good scope and good performance standards in the beginning. And that's one of the biggest tasks that the committee has, and working with the folks in town, is coming up with good scope, good performance standards, and figuring what do you want to get out of the project, what risk you want to take on, what level of involvement do you want? Do you want to have that tight involvement, or would you prefer to have a larger organization, a complete organization involved with you providing input at phases along the way? Regardless, that it's important to make sure that you build in user feedback into the process, so that it is basically a regenerative system that you can learn from your experience. So I greatly appreciate your attention, and I guess I'll turn it over to Ted.
Yeah, Bruce, thank you very much. I think, like you said, the presentations were both very good, and there was some overlap. I think you did a good job. There was some, fill in the blank stuff, but now I'd like to invite CDM up to talk about, their experience, what they've seen out there, and if there's any other, kind of hard being the third one out there to get any new information out there, but if you have any place where you want to fill the blanks or specific examples, feel free. Sure.
I'm Adam Udelis from CDM Smith. This is David Young, also from CDM Smith. I guess we had an opportunity to review the document that was created a while back, and David Young, I don't know to what degree you've all had a chance to see what David had created a while back, but nonetheless, we certainly had some comments, and certainly as it relates to design build. We can certainly reiterate what's been brought up as it relates to design build, but I think David's got some comments based on his experience having worked in this business doing facilities planning and working with municipalities of Massachusetts for the last 35 years. And with that, I'll turn it to Dave.
Thanks, Adam. We did get a chance to review the document. There's a lot of good information in there, a lot of effort put in, a lot of good concepts. I guess one of the overarching questions was, did you look at the bigger picture, or is it focused just on that one commercial residential area? Certainly smart growth is the way to look at things today. You no longer just look at wastewater or Title V systems. Clearly, you want to look at the full water cycle. You want to look at water, wastewater, stormwater. Where are you able to conserve the water use? Where are you able to recharge water? Where can you use water reuse? Keep that whole cycle going. We did have some concerns over some of the information put forth in terms of documenting things to make sure that you had the right plan for the community. And then was that a decentralized portion within the community, and there's other areas that you're going to develop similar to that down the road? Or is this it forever? That didn't come across in the document. I'm not sure you've had the ability or the benefit of actually addressing that specific question, but certainly something the town should look at prior to moving forward. Clearly, this fits into a decentralized solution, which is great, particularly for the size of a community like Littleton. Can't be argued with the philosophy of trying to do everything green today. That's the way everybody wants to do it. But you ask 10 people on the street, what does green mean? You're going to get 10 different definitions. And you need to match what the town of Littleton thinks green is to what you want to then implement and what are your goals. And when you set those goals, that's how you then go about matching into what you're going to build and how you're going to go about building it and implementing it. As you've heard Bruce and I guess Kent and others earlier, who we've worked with both firms, you know, the means to implement needs to match what you're trying to implement. There's a fair amount of risk, and you need to assign that risk appropriately. You're going to assign it to the contractor, you're going to assign it to the town, who's going to be involved. You need to do the design, bid, build is one means. It's probably the most common, has been the most common, but there are other methods out there now, and you've heard, I guess, dissertations on those, so I won't bore you with the others, regarding design build. I have been involved in all of them. Did the largest wastewater project here in Mass, town of Plymouth, that was design build, and design build operate. There were 2 projects to implement that. But there was a lot of discussion about which means to use because, again, you need to match the project to that method. The design build operate was all on one site. Clear site. It was like you take it, go design it. Town hired CDM Smith at the time to prepare 30% design documents, put the appropriate appropriation documents out there, procurement. We helped them review it. There was a big effort to do that. We were actually the town's agent in that process. But then regarding force mains, pumping stations, all the road work, there was a big debate as to whether that was appropriate for design build or not. There was actually several or fewer proposers on that because of the amount of risk of working in streets, the permitting involved, all the unknowns. So the question becomes, was that actually an appropriate means to implement that portion of the project? And, you can get into that discussion. So the reason I bring those aspects up are regarding, the type of project you have here. You have all of that involved. What's the town's role going to be? What are the private companies going to be? What's their role? You're working in public streets, you're probably going to do some work in private streets or often in some of the industrial park developments. So you need to match the implementation method without regurgitating what you've just heard, I believe, and be happy to discuss or answer questions on that. In terms of the program that was put forth, I said earlier that we did have a couple concerns. Part of those concerns were the size of the facilities that are being proposed in a municipal type market, whether the revenues projected would actually come to fruition for you. And the main basis of the economics of that proposal counted on those revenue streams. You're actually going to be able to charge for people to discharge their food waste here. Well, from what I understand, some of those food wastes are going away for free now. State of Massachusetts, as you may know, the Department of Environmental Protection has a program to try to get food waste out of the municipal landfills here in the Commonwealth within the next couple of years. Well, they're looking at generating 7 large facilities around the state. 2 communities are already moving forward with putting RFPs, requests for proposals, out on the street to be hosts for those. So there's going to be 7 large facilities. So is someone going to come to your small facility with their food waste? It's commodity driven. It's like trash. They're going to go where it's cheapest. So they may come to you 1 year, or they're going to be there in 5 years. Questions to ask. Same with the septage, very much commodity driven. Somebody lowers their septage gallon rate by half a penny, they're going up the street. They're not gonna come to you. So if you're relying on those revenue streams, you need to be careful as to whether they're actually going to come to fruition or not. I had a little bit, caught a little bit here of the phasing discussion. Very important, particularly on the size facilities you're talking about. But I would tell you that our experience is that if you go to too small a phase, you actually end up spending a lot more money. And that would be my concern, looking at 5 phases for a 180,000 gallon a day type of treatment system, to me seemed a little excessive. By the time you ramp up, you're going to constantly be chasing your tail, so to speak, in that, you know, you're going to constantly be building that next phase. So, you know, maybe building half of it. Maybe you don't build the whole thing. But a lot of your flows already exist. And if you're going to go and build the system, you should be able to calculate those flows. And then you look at what's known as the build-out to occur and what's the timeline you expect for that. But if you did, you know, 5 phases at 30, 40,000 gallons a day, you're going to constantly be in the construction mode. So, you know, again, things to look at are that. I was a little concerned over the treatment method being proposed. Wasn't that familiar with it here in New England. Certainly you have to be careful of technologies. You know, we had a warm winter this past year, but we've had the opposite too, very cold winters. And when you talk about wetlands treatment systems, and you're looking here in New England to constantly be meeting a permit 365 days a year, you know, you need to use a technology that's going to make sure you're meeting permit 365 days a year. You're a municipality. You're not a private industry. You know, you're sort of held to, quote, the higher standard. And so those are things to consider when you're picking that. One of the big things that, getting back to the green aspect, that I constantly push, big proponent, CDM Smith is a big proponent, is to look for appropriate effluent recharge. In my mind, the most difficult portion of any project like this is where does the effluent actually go? And the offshoot of that is big proponent of water reuse. I was actually in the discussions when Gillette Stadium did not want to use water reuse, but I was representing a community that they were trying to tie into for wastewater service at the time, and I said, why not water reuse? All the newest NFL stadiums are doing it, why aren't you? And they were dead set against it in that meeting, till I spoke to Mr. McManus, who was the project managers, over the next week or two, and suddenly they turned around. They started to see the benefits, community benefits, water savings to the town of Foxborough, which is where the stadium's located. But that's also a good example of public-private partnerships working together, constantly actually still having discussions with that as part of trying to create a wastewater district down there for 3 communities, and the Patriots are involved with that now. But back to the water reuse, been involved in the New England Water Environment Association's water reuse committees here in Massachusetts for many years. CDM Smith has written all 3 versions of the EPA's water reuse guidelines. I worked with Alan Slater here at the Massachusetts DEP to write the first Massachusetts water reuse guidelines, and we permitted the first water reuse project here in the town of Yarmouth, where they use water from the septage treatment plant that the town operates as the irrigation source water for the golf course that we put on their capped landfill. So there's another perfect example of trying to mix several projects together, link them together to get the most green that you can. And that project is 12 years old. So again, a lot of things to consider, things you need to then match into how it's best to implement that. CDM Smith, and Adam can get into this in more detail, we have 750 people here in Massachusetts. We have over 4,500 people in the firm. We have a tremendous talent base that's available to help do these projects. We have projects at over 80 offices here in the U.S., so we cover all the climates. Sometimes you get jealous of the people in the warm climate, but when it gets too hot, they can have it. You go out in the other parts, they're suffering the droughts. So yes, they're in the more water-short climates, so water reuse is even more important to them. Up here in the Northeast, it's more about where can you get the effluent recharged appropriately, so you're also addressing the nutrient, nitrogen issues, phosphorus issues in that effluent, and where's that going? So again, wherever you can try to recharge it, great. Want to add a little more to that?
Sure. I think I heard some discussion relative to the design-build side of it, and I think one of the things that we do in our organization is we have a design-build company, CDM Constructors, and we do nothing but design-build every day for projects large and small. And talking to project managers and owners, and one of the things that's common to success in design-build project is an educated owner. And when owners know what they want, projects have a tendency to become far more successful than leaving that up to someone else. And the key to making design-build projects successful is to scope it out front, understand what you are getting, understand what you want. It begins certainly with the end in mind. What do you want this thing to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Certainly the issue of risk discussed by the folks ahead of us. But it's really, you have to be an active player, an active participant in a successful design build, where we have some major water utilities in New Jersey that are investor-owned utilities that are very active in that. And the reason our projects are successful with them because they are very much involved and very much up to speed on what their risk is, what our role is, and what their role is. So design build is certainly an appropriate delivery system based on what we see here. And there's engineer, procure, construction management. There's a bunch of other potential delivery methods that you could look at. But given what you're looking to accomplish, it absolutely would be fine. I think the key is upfront is to get the scope right, the scope that you understand. That'll get you the best price. That'll get you folks coming in here with an understanding of what you're looking for. And to the degree that makes sense, there are organizations, I mean, in Massachusetts now, you're seeing a lot of communities on projects similar to this get involved with bringing an OPM, owner's project manager in. It may be suitable, in your case, to have an owner's project manager, somebody with the kind of experience that can guide you through it, answer the questions that you may have during the process, but certainly ask the questions of the would-be developers, so that you do get, in fact, what you want, and you're getting that direction. Because I'm guessing most of you are lay folks and not designing water and wastewater treatment plants very often. Well, I might be wrong, but being that the case, it may make sense to have some help on your team as you start to look at the next stage, and that organization can help you with designers in understanding the construction, understanding schedule, understanding permitting, understanding technology. There's a lot that's going to come at you in the course of the next several months as you encounter this. And the good news is there's help. In a lot of communities, you have to know what you don't know. And there are communities out there to take advantage of the OPM process and having some folks in there to help with those kinds of decisions. And then when it's all said and done, that OPM can guide you through that process. It's certainly worth considering, given where you are, from what I can tell where you are, to consider that. And aside from that, that we certainly, if you have anything else, David.
Well, just one thing that I'd like to add on is, I'm sure you've heard the technical aspects, you've heard issues about the program, you've heard implementation methods. One thing you shouldn't forget is the public education portion. Can be the most critical portion, because that's when all you folks here, you've heard all the words. But you're a very small percentage of the community of Littleton. And so you don't want them relying on just the article they may read in a newspaper, or hopefully they're all sitting there watching cable right now, not 2 o'clock in the morning, but, because the Red Sox aren't good. you need to educate the public as to why you're doing the method that you ultimately select, why you're doing the project that you ultimately select to do.
You live in Littleton?
I don't.
One of the things that's on our radar as a committee right now is the public education.
It's a very important piece in any community. Littleton, you know, like I said, I've been doing this a couple years, and, you know, if you can't get the buy-in, the best project is not going to be implemented. You can have the best project out there, and it's not going to get implemented. So you can't ignore that piece. And that doesn't stop with just when you decide what you're going to do. That is from today all the way through startup of operations. And maybe even beyond that as you get into multiple phases. So,
It's an opportunity where folks, if they don't know, they vote no. And if they understand it, understand what you're trying to do, and trying to bring value to your community, to the common good of your town, folks will go with that. Folks, if they understand that, if it's good government, and they see where the money's going to go, and they see benefit, and they see that you were well-meaning folks trying to do the best thing for your community, people will support that. And if it's transparent and open, and you give them ample opportunity to come and kick the tires and ask you questions, and you respond with good, old-fashioned, honest answers, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, this is what it's going to cost, this is why it costs what it's going to cost, this is when it's going to happen, this is how you're going to be impacted. Though, if you're up front and can convey that, folks will participate. Still a small town, you know, that's the good news. And you can treat it like it's a small town, and this is an issue that the town collectively needs to deal with. So there's an opportunity for you as a group to try to deal with that. You know, the delivery methods, we can talk about that till you're blue in the face. And when the time comes, there's a technology that's going to work. When it's all said and done, however, you folks are the ones that step up and say that, you know, we put our time in, we've made the effort, and this is what makes sense for us as a community to do. It's a decision that impacts you over the next 50 years, because it impacts the way your town looks and how it's developed. So those are the kinds of issues that, you know, you have a great opportunity to bring up and make your project successful.
All right, well, I think that was pretty good. You had some new comments and have some questions for me. I think we'll bring the committee back up here. I'd like to go to Bob right now to see if he has any input or advice. No, you would just join over there and we'll ask questions. We'll just have a general question and answer after, see if Bob has anything.
Long march back to the front of the room. Well, let me ask you a question first. I mean, what's the goal of what's the objective of the meeting tonight? Do we want to discuss design build, design bid build, design build operate as the sort of the core? Or respond to comments, ask questions of the three presenters?
I think tonight we're here for fact-finding. I don't think the committee is prepared to make any decision tonight, but we're going to take information in that we can then discuss as a whole, and hopefully at some point in the next month or so, we're going to determine which path we're going to take, because we have a lot of things on our agenda, and until we determine which path we're going to go, we really can't move forward. I think that's really our next step, and I think, you know, I haven't heard much different from the committee. I think there's some other goals that were in the report that we need to do, but I really think that because we've hashed this out, you know, for 3 or 4 meetings where we've had this, well, do we go this way, do we go that way? We finally sat down and said, look, we need more information. That's what we're here to do tonight, is to gather that information. I have some questions. I'm sure the committee has some questions, and the public may have some questions. So I think I don't know if you want to give some sort of opinion or summary, or you want to just go right into questions.
To answer the first question, our goal is to understand the methods of construction.
Okay.
All right,
Design
well,
build.
I do have one comment on the 3 presentations, which is that when we first started working with the committee 2 years ago, there was a very prescriptive set of objectives laid out for us by the town. One, this is an economic undertaking. It is not an environmental undertaking. in terms of what the town and the townsfolk want to see happen. And in that was the desire for the property owners affected to pay for the facility in its entirety over a 20-year period. And, you know, that's a fairly restrictive method of taking a look at this. As a consequence, also the town had been through a 2 or 3 year process of defining the two districts, the common sewer district and the industrial overlay district to the west of it on 119. And the desire was to sewer those and see if property taxes could be spiked, and if we could create, as a consequence, a walking village center, which would help stabilize town residential property taxes. So that when CRWA undertook the job of figuring out how to approach this, there were restrictions that had already been placed on this project. It was not to see if we could get together with Groton, Westford, Boxborough, Acton, and put together a centralized sewer system to solve the problems of all of the communities. The idea was, how do we spur economic growth in the common and industrial areas as defined, and the only way to do that is to sewer those areas. And is there a way that we could economically sewer those areas and do it on the backs of the 100 properties that are in those districts? So the report that was generated is a plan based on those restrictions. If we're going to change the restrictions, that obviously is going to change the plans, but I don't think that that is what the sewer committee is here for. You had a very specific charge from the Board of Selectmen to say, you know, how are we going to do this in those areas? That being said, my reaction pretty much for probably the past year to this approach is to go at least design, build, and perhaps design, build, operate as we let an RFP. And the reason, I think, is one that Weston and Sampson and Bruce at Natural Systems brought up, and I think CDM also referred to, is the risk factor, the fact that we're shifting risk from the municipality to the designer builder. And I think that there's another part here, which is very important, and that's the creativity factor. I was a general contractor on the construction of my own house, okay? And I ended up having 2 different plumbers work on the house for reasons I won't get into here. But I noticed that when the second plumber came in, the first thing he did was spend the whole time telling me all the mistakes that the first plumber had made. And why it was going to cost me more because the first plumber made so many mistakes that the second plumber couldn't tie into those things in exactly the same. You following my drift here? It's not that the first plumber was bad. It's that the second plumber didn't do it that way. And those kinds of disconnects between the designer and the contractor, and ultimately the operator, make for projects that cost more. And the municipality assumes the risk of those disconnects in each phase. So, yes, the municipality gives up some control in the design build, operate process, in the sense that we don't have a building committee overlooking every single aspect, coming up with a new set of requests for proposal elements in a bid, then to go out to the contractor. But I would suggest that the loss of control is minor compared to the seamlessness of process, where the same group is seeing the project from beginning to end through, and that the town, as a consequence, benefits to a tremendous degree. One, by reducing risks, also by reducing costs, because the second plumber cost me more because he had to redo things in his way, not the other way. A couple of my reactions to the presentations tonight.
Well, let's, probably not debate.
No,
I don't think.
yeah, no, it's good to know where, because Bob's our consultant for all intents and purposes, and we want to know what he's thought. I wanted him to wrap it all up. So let's now, I think, get to the committee, and let's hear, we have questions and to fill in our blanks, and then we can get together another meeting and have a debate.
You wanna,
So, you go first.
let the public, ask first, or?
No, let's go. You ready to go?
Okay.
Yeah.
My biggest question after listening to those presentations is, so how do we get to the next step? How do we get to a bid? And it sounds like what we need to do is, find out, do we know what our scope is? Do we know what we want this thing to look at, like, in the next 10 to 20 years? And have we evaluated the risk, to decide how much we want to absorb and how much we want to pass off, which sounds like those approaches, that's part of the process. You decide how much you want to accept and not. And that the curve was, the more risk we want to take, the lower our cost, and the less risk we want to take, the higher the cost.
To a degree.
So how do we get to that next step where we're actually going out to bidding this thing out? And I don't know, we need to answer it now, or do we know the answer?
No, I think the first thing is to determine what route we go,
Yeah, you gotta
right?
decide.
We gotta figure out, we're going design build or we're going design bid build. And at that point, there are two different routes, I think. Because this one over here is gonna require a special legislation, and as CDM pointed out at the end, one thing that I've been talking about a little bit here is an owner's rep. I know a little bit about engineering, Steve knows a little bit about it, but, we need somebody there full-time watching our back on the design
Right,
bid
but now
build.
all that's gonna
And then-
cost money, so now our next step is to go to the town and ask them for some money, whether it's some money to look for an owner's
No,
rep, some
I
money
don't-
to,
I don't believe so. Our next step is what we had talked about, and anybody can jump in after I'm done here and say, I think what we really were looking at, and this is where one of my questions was going, we want to do an RFQ. We want to get a request for qualifications so that we can narrow this down. And I know you can do that on design build. Can you design that on design bid build, Steve? Can you do an RFQ first so that you can say, okay, we've got the qualifications, and, these 5 people are qualified to bid on our project after it's designed?
You can do that. I think there's a step missing.
Okay,
And I apologize if I take you back a step.
Okay.
There's a step missing. The report you have in front of you right now lays out a concept
Yeah.
for what your project is. You need to complete some detailed planning, which is the first step in the process and being actually allowed to do this. One thing you're gonna have to do is you have to do enough of the plan to flesh out the environmental impacts and things like that are gonna be needed, because you're gonna need approval. You're gonna need approval from the state of Massachusetts, through the Office of Environmental Affairs, Energy and Environmental Affairs, under the MEPA process, the Mass Environmental Policy Act. The project nature dictates that you cannot proceed with a project of this size and this degree without this filing and final notification form under that. So you have a minimum amount of planning. I don't know if that was envisioned as an end piece of the plan that you folks have started. In my opinion, from reading, and Bruce, you may jump in and tell me, that's one of the reasons you left that statement in there, that there's more planning to be done.
Right.
Because you need to refine your plan. You need to do things like refine the district, refine the service area. I think Dave mentioned, make some very clear statements that this either is the whole project, or
Yeah.
there
Well,
are
we are.
reasons why there's nothing else.
And those two things have done, we have defined the district, and that's the district for right now.
And
There's
then
nothing-
I think you need to then package that into kind of a, maybe it doesn't need to be a real thick
Yeah.
planning document, at least enough to make a statement environmentally as to why you're gonna proceed with the project, get approval from the state. to move forward. That, right now, that is more critical to you in your process, in my opinion, than making a decision on how you're gonna deliver the construction. As you do that, you can refine some of the decision-making processes that were started in the report that Charles River and Natural Systems Utilities folks did. Things like the idea to wrap in the, septic treatment, the
Yeah.
idea to wrap in potential organics to energy components. There's a lot of things that will be happening in that industry. I think as Adam and Dave said, those things are happening in many communities right now. Most communities aren't telling the other communities what they're doing, but almost every community is talking about these aspects. Many things will happen over the next 2 years in that industry. You need to refine to what degree you really want to do those things, so that you can, basically, to procure the services you want to procure, you need to say, these are the exact things we want to do. These are the streets that get sewer, these are the properties that are going to phase, and you want to refine the phasing, you want to go out in. And I think, in respect to the process, not just define the economics of the process, which are very big, but also the environmental impacts. Enough so that you can go back to, where the folks from CDM ended, which is bring it back out when you do go to moving forward to your community and say, this is what it's gonna cost exactly, what we're gonna actually ask them to do for, what we're gonna move forward with, and this is what the project schedule is. And this is how we introduce it through the process. You'll actually need to do a lot of those things, I think, to secure it. So the first step for you, I believe, is more planning. At some point through that process, you have an opportunity to make more decisions on the procurement steps.
Yeah, and the other way to look at it is the actual design of the actual plan for the actual districts. To do that, the town has to hire a contractor, a design contractor, to actually go out. So having made the determination as to whether we're gonna go design bid build or design build is useful, so that when you hire that contractor, the contractor knows that, he's gonna see this all the way through the process.
But it doesn't sound like, it sounds to me like we would need to know more of a cost to just be able to decide which of those ways is best. If we have a better idea of cost and, I don't know how far that next plan that you're referring to goes down the line, but it sounds like it would probably say, this is the area we want to put the treatment plant, this is where we think our effluent's going. So it sounds like a pretty good sized study to me, that we need to know all those things to be able to go tell somebody,
To me.
we need to know, that tells us how we can, which process is best for us. Then we know more of the risk. We know the scope much better, where it's gonna go. Right now, we think we know where test pits, we're gonna do some test pits, and we kinda think we know where effluent's going, but it may not go there.
But to get to that point, you need a specialist to help you determine those.
That's what I said, yeah, I'm going
And
to
that-
agree.
And that's where the RFP or RFQ comes in,
Well,
in helping us to procure that specialist that could help us determine those
I see
results.
us trying to ask for qualifications for something we haven't fully defined.
Yeah. I see that point. I guess my question to follow up with what Kent was saying was, can we get a design build contract on board and take us through some of this permitting through the MEPO? Will there be somebody to do that?
My estimation, go ahead, Bruce.
Well, I guess the answer is any of the three firms, you could have an RFQ that, for example, we're representative of the industry here. You could do an RFQ but to have either a design build or design build operator be the framework of the RFQ, but say step one is help us with planning. And so you don't necessarily have to know what the end point is, but just what's the conceptual approach you're going to tackle it with. And so you're not too far off track with your decision. You're, tonight, to sort of say what kind of entity do we want to start helping us further define the planning that Kent's bringing up.
And at that point, you could have a contract, what we've been talking about is we're at 30,000 feet right now, we're looking at, we gotta get down to 10,000 feet, and that's, I think, in other words, that's the way you've put it, we need to refine some unknowns here. And I guess the way I envisioned was to get a DBO on board, or a design build on board, and, get a contract, and say, look, here's everything we're looking at, but our first step is to do this. We need to get, first of all, contract with you to do this, and after that point, we need to reevaluate. Because the other thing I wanted to ask is, in these design build contracts, is there a point where somebody comes back, do you get a price right up front and that's the price? Or do you get an estimate and then the estimate gets refined and you can stop and look and say, hey, I don't think that's gonna be feasible anymore? Adam, you're kind of waving like you're.
It does get refined, it usually gets refined up,
Right.
Unfortunately.
But
I guess I gotta cut to the chase. You're in a situation now where many school districts in Massachusetts were in over the last 20 years. And it's really why the OPM legislation was created, because of the situations that you're in right now. You're asking very good questions, and you don't have, those questions you need to have answered, and you need to be able to have that understanding before you can put an RFP out for, and that, it's a much higher level of detail than you have right now for design builders to give you a number.
Yeah.
Now, they're gonna refine that number during the process, and they're gonna give you a GMP, a guaranteed maximum price at some point.
Yeah.
Right now, your guaranteed maximum price is gonna be high,
Yeah, right.
because you haven't defined anything. And you're at a mode now where, there's, and again, I'll go back to the school building authority. The OPM legislation was not created for these kinds of projects. The OPM legislation was created for schools.
What's OPM?
Owner's Project Manager.
So,
And the reason that, to help you, to guide you through the process of understanding what your scope is, help you define what your project's gonna look like. You've done a lot of work. You have a good understanding right now. You gotta get to more detail so that you can get good numbers, because you're gonna eventually go to town meeting or some source of money. And you're gonna need to be able to have that defined. But
Right.
today,
Is that an iterative step? We need to get to this OPM to help us define it, and that costs us a bucket of money, and that's gonna help us decide what the real final bucket of money is gonna be. That's just something we need to do.
you're gonna spend a little.
Yeah.
I was on my municipal building committee for 14 years, so I was sitting in your seats. But I also have sat on this side of the table in this seat. I testified up for the Inspector General when they created the OPM, Owner's Project Manager stuff, as part of the American Council of Engineering Companies. Adam's right. It was geared towards committees that were doing schools, police stations, fire stations, those folks, because the wastewater industry is used to working typically on a day-to-day basis with consultants who work with them hand in glove to do these projects. Your local police chief may have built this building once. He's probably not built another police station, probably isn't gonna build another police station. So it's all brand new to him. To do a project like you're proposing here, there haven't been a whole lot of them done. It's a new process, but it's more in the wastewater realm, a committee working hand in glove with a consultant, whether it's the owner's project manager or you just hire the consultant to work with you and walk you through the process. But I think that's really your next step, and then get into the full discussion of, what is the timing of the implementation method, how far, even within, you go design build. Are you just gonna write the little 10-page design build document? Or are you gonna write the 1,000-page design build document? How much control do you want? That gets back to that risk issue of how much control or how much are you willing to give up. Design build is all about saving time to save cost. That's where the cost savings come in. You're giving up flexibility, you're giving more risk over to them, and they're gonna save costs. As soon as you sign that document, they're gonna do everything they can to save money.
But you
And
need,
the control better be in those documents that you've issued and had them sign, or you've lost it. So you need someone up front to be working
Right.
with you that you can trust to walk you through the process.
and that's what we've talked about. We've used the words owner's rep more
Owner's rep
than,
is-
Right.
more than owner's project manager is the word we've been using.
But it-
We're already at that point. In fact, we've been to that point. We've been at that point for the last several months. We know that we need to bring some expert on who is savvy in the understanding of sewer treatment and water management to help us draft the appropriate language in the document that we'll use to procure whoever we bring on, whether it be a design, build, operate firm or just even a hard bid. But we need some expert, and we've talked about that for months. That's why we brought you guys in tonight, to help us understand what those other options are, those other purchasing options are in relationship to the water management industry.
Well, I think I disagree with that a little bit of where we're at, Rich, because I think that my sense is that the committee we want an owner's rep. I think we're one step ahead of where we actually are. I think the next RFQ that goes out is an RFQ for a consultant who can help us shape this and tell us where we're gonna go.
And that's not too far what we've talked about. What we talked about right now is Charles River is gonna, with the current contract that they were just authorized for, or that we're gonna, with the money that we just authorized, that we intend to have a contract with Charles River, that was where they were gonna play owner's rep, not play, but they were gonna have the role of owner's rep for this amount of work. And what I envisioned, and I may have said this before, I don't know if this is different from what anyone else is at that point, we were either gonna be ready to go for an RFQ for a design bid build or for an owner's rep at that point, because they could carry the torch so far. But Bob, I know you guys do great work, but at some point, we need somebody like a CDM or a Weston and Sampson standing beside us to get us through
Right,
this.
but, I agree. You said at the end of their process, we're either they're gonna give us an RFQ for an owner's rep or a design build. That's telling me they're gonna tell us whether we're ready for a design build, which infers that we're ready to start digging.
No, all right. No, see, I don't, see, the other thing I was envisioning, and I think this is in line, if we could go to an RFQ, and then we have a bunch of qualified design, if we go design build, then we have a bunch of qualified people. And what I was envisioning is bringing those on board for the first phase of getting us down to that 10,000 square feet.
Yeah, kind of what I said
10,000
before,
feet.
though, we're asking a request for qualification from a group of people, but we aren't able to tell them, here's exactly what we want.
Right.
So,
Request for what?
But a request for qualifications, it's okay at that point, I believe. It's the RFP that you really need to have you down to that 10,000 square feet.
I guess, Ted, I would even add then, what are the key qualifications? Do you folks know the key qualifications you want to evaluate those who propose on?
No, that's what we've got Charles River to help, that's one of their tests, is to help us write that. And we haven't defined that scope, we haven't signed a contract, but that's one thing that may be in there.
See, that's
yeah.
what I was alluding to.
I mean, unless CDM's volunteering.
That we have Charles River to help us, because they're savvy in the water management industry, none of us are. And we need that expert who can help guide us with the right language, right description, help us understand the permitting process so we can make sure that everything that we need to encompass is enclosed in this project from start to finish, meaning that we procure, Charles River to help us to bring the project to the point where we need to put that RFQ out, which brings in the next phase of the project, the design build or the hard bid.
Bruce, you have?
Well, I guess to add is that I like a project coming into it. I mean, you don't necessarily know the outcome if you're really honest with it. Right now, and Ted's making a good point. This was a 30,000 foot level, very high level conceptual analysis, and it gives some direction to go, but it doesn't give all the answers. And that's what you need to do. You need to refine it to say what specifically we're going to do in the ground. But you need to do the field investigations to find out what the capacity of the ground is, to find out what your project is. So you don't want to over-prescribe your project too soon. You got to recognize there's some planning and investigation to do to find out specifically what you're looking for. And if you can get a team and it could be DBO or a designer, you know, the traditional route. Get someone who you trust to start on that path, saying, we're going to answer, here are the questions we have to answer so we can know what we're going to build. And even with design build, it doesn't mean you're going to go out and dig right away. You can build in those milestones, make it progressive, so that the community goes along with the process and has a choice of decision-making.
Yeah, but is it imperative to decide which process before, as we're trying to solve the next step? Doesn't sound like it. It sounds like we.
It's not imperative, it's a choice. It kind of helps you frame your questions.
And that's what we talked about, and I think from what I'm hearing from you, and one of the questions was to everybody was, you know, are there checkpoints? If we go design build, we need to have points where we can stop and say, okay, here's the refined cost or the refined income. You know, we need to go to the town and say, this is what we're projecting now. It's gotten better, it's gotten worse than our last one. Do you want us to proceed with the next phase? And I'm thinking the next phase is to get us down to that 10,000 square feet, and we need 10,000 feet, and stop and say, here's our refined cost, do we go? And then at that point, we go to another phase that says, okay, well, here's we now have our construction documents, we already know the type of equipment we're putting in there, we're gonna propose to put in there. Here's our final gross maximum price, you know, do you want us to proceed?
I mean, the
And are
answer
those are those steps in there? We don't just say, here you go, design build contractor, we'll see you in 10 years when we're all done.
No,
No.
you can write a contract any way you want.
Okay.
I mean, you could write a contract that's one page long that says, you know, produce a wastewater treatment plant for this district, and we'll see you later, come
Right.
back, and we'll write some checks and everything. And, you know, you can build into any contract stop points where
Okay.
you evaluate and that sort of thing. The key is to get to that point
Right.
where, so we're gonna dig some holes and do some tests and do some capacity. Now, is it a DEP level groundwater discharge permit kind of investigation? No. But does it look at mounding and capacity of the ground and that sort of things? Yes. You know, I think in a month and a half, we'll be in a better place. And then I think we have to make a determination as to whether we're going to bring in a owner's performance manager who's going to write a specific scope based on specific understanding of how this is all supposed to turn out, or you can go out with an RFQ and hire somebody and make the design build process one that's incremental.
Now,
So,
I just want to point out, that's one of the things that we've been getting from the town, is that they don't want us just running off with this pot of money. They want those incremental steps in, and I think the committee has done that, and it has committed to doing that, and I think that's one thing we want to make sure that's in there tonight. No matter which way we go, there are going to be steps that we can stop and check with the town, and if we get the approval, necessary approval, so.
Bruce, I think you made a good point. And unfortunately, there were two members who aren't here tonight that would agree with you, and I agree with you. We can't do it in the next 3 months, 6 months. It may take a year to get us to where we want to be. Got to slow it down and understand where we're at and what we don't know. We learned a lot tonight. Rich and I are very familiar with OPMs, but unfortunately, some schools.
Yeah.
But we know what an OPM can do, and we go look at one, we got a stable one we can look at. We don't know how many we can look at that can do what we need to have done. Okay, am I correct, Rich?
Absolutely.
So, we've got some work to, this has been great tonight, because we've gotten to a point now where we understand the different phases of the process. All right, OPM, design, build, operation, and so forth. Now, we gotta take it to the next phase. And I think we've got enough information and enough help.
Well, I don't know, does anybody else have questions? I've been doing a lot of talking. I don't know if anybody else has.
Well, I'm done.
Well, I think tonight we made it to a good point, because prior to tonight, we knew that we needed to get some expert, we had gotten to the level where we needed to bring in some expertise. We have done that with Charles River. And to help us define the pathway to our next step, whether that be developing an RFQ or doing the tests and the planning that we need to do prior to developing an RFQ, so when that RFQ gets developed, it is more specific to create, to help bring in, or when and if this moves forward and brings in an engineering firm, their scope is better developed. So we're moving along that pathway. We still, I see two paths here. One trying to find that project manager that's going to help us define the RFQ, and then the other path to define what kind of process we're going to build this with if it goes forward.
What's that? Yeah, no, I mean, too. I just have a quick question. Steve, you mentioned some of the things you give up some control on how it's gonna look, and I think you talk about more of what the system's gonna look like, where the collection systems are gonna be, where the pump station are gonna be, but as far as like above ground features and things like that, I mean, when you say look, a lot of the public's gonna say, well, what's the final finished product of the, the vertical section's gonna be? I mean, are there design standards so that you can say, okay, well, the plant has to at least look attractive, it's not gonna look like just some black box, and, these pump stations have to be somewhat, somewhat architecturally pleasing. You don't give up those types of controls, do you?
Well, it depends on the level of detail you put forth at the beginning, how much flexibility or how much leeway or how much risk you're imposing on the contract again. I mean, yeah, there are standards they have to meet, but you still have to define how much flexibility you can give. Yeah, are you gonna bring the design to the level where you're showing some sort of, what things are gonna look like, or what type of structure you're talking about?
Yeah.
That's all, how far are you gonna take it in your preliminary design, in the package that you put out?
Right.
But it's kind of at the heart of what we're talking about here. Yeah, you're gonna be giving up some flexibility.
Yeah.
Or you're gonna be providing flexibility to the contract.
But it's not as if the contractor's gonna go off to the Caribbean, design this thing, come back and say, here it is. It's a constant conversation.
Right.
And when you and I say look, I mean look, that's when you're looking at the plans as far as the layout and things like that, not as far as the actual physical appearance of a building. So I just don't want people thinking that we're gonna give up all control, and we're gonna have these, these little sheds all over town, for these pump stations. So I just wanted to.
That's where it's gonna be very important that you have upfront documents. You've gotta have upfront documents that can lay that out for you. You're not walking away from it. It's a process that you're gonna collaborate in. You're gonna be very actively involved in it. And, because if you do decide to not be involved, you will get checks all over town.
Yeah.
Because they will give you a price and you'll get what you.
That's what they've priced out, yeah.
So it doesn't absolve you from a high level of participation in getting what you're looking for.
Is there anything from the public? Yeah.
Yes.
Anybody?
I have a tiny question. I may have misheard, but I thought that you, Bob, said that Rentham was one of the places that was doing something similar in terms of this process. And then I thought I heard Bruce say that he had already developed a system for Rentham malls.
That's for the outlet mall, yes.
I see. So what you were talking about omitted the outlet.
No, the outlet mall is, Rentham is considering expansion
Oh, I see.
in both areas. One on 1A and the other is in the downtown area. There's a 50-acre site behind the little downtown area. So yes, what they want us to look at is what would districts in those two areas look like? How big would they look? What kind of capacity, treatment would be necessary?
So those
that
weren't
sort of thing.
contradictions at all.
No, so Bruce is working on a project in Rentham, is that what you're saying, and you're working for the town of
No,
Rentham?
they built
Bill
one
Leonard,
in
for
Rentham.
the outlets,
Right.
and then
Separate
Bob,
projects.
Bob, you're working on something for the town?
Right.
Yeah.
But may I add to that? For example, we are working here in town for Sam Park and Company, and we're doing the engineering and about to submit an application to Mass DEP for our 55,000 gallon per day modification of he already has a permit for modifying his permit and a design build approach, and that is not inconsistent with this project. It addresses 55,000 gallons per day of capacity for the project across the street that's under construction. And if, I guess after the public has a chance, I'd like to, if it doesn't get asked, ask myself the question of, addressing some of Dave's good feedback.
Thank you.
Okay. Not much public here tonight, but Vera, thanks for coming out.
I'd like to address
Sure.
some key issues, Dave. I appreciate your reviewing of the report, and I guess a couple of things is relative to the phasing. The phasing was representative. It wasn't meant to be specific, but the concept behind the phasing is to minimize the length of the collection system, to have the systems as close as possible to treatment and reuse systems as close as possible to the sources. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a large continuous construction project. It could be multiple small projects going on simultaneously. There's a variety of ways of addressing that. But the phases are not specified in the report. So it's going to be up to the committee to determine what's the appropriate level of phasing depending on needs and capacity that you have, and that'll be refined.
Yeah, I think that was my point, is, how many phases are you going to actually build this project over needs to be considered up front. And that probably comes back more into a financing piece than anything else, but that needs to be considered when you're designing the facilities.
Right. So when they move,
And I think the committee, and I don't know if it was from yours, but the committee became aware of that, and I became aware, I've been asking some other questions about first phase and things like that. You guys want to go debate it? We have a few fine establishments in town. You guys want to go have a beer and, continue this conversation? I might be heading over to one of them too, so.
just two quick points, just because not everyone's going to join us.
What's that?
Two quick points, though. I guess the issue of the larger organics, the economics of that's still being worked out. It's a very new requirement Massachusetts has for organics recycling. Whether large plants are successful, small plants, we don't know yet. But it's worth looking at that for Littleton. And finally, I think the key thing is the treatment technology has to work 365 days a year, and I completely agree with Dave on that. And the majority of our treatment wetland systems are in Minnesota, much colder than here, and we have systems that meet the 10 milligram per liter nitrate requirement 365 days a year.
Same requirement they have here?
Yes.
Okay. What's that? All right, yeah, and there's nothing over here?
One other quick question. The report that you all are referring to, is that the same report that came out, maybe
December.
4 or 5 months ago?
Yeah.
Okay,
January 4th, 2012.
fine. That's all I need to know. Thanks.
I would, I've read, just in reference to the report, I've read a number of letters to the editor in the last couple of months that purport to know how much this plan is going to cost, and anyway, a lot of erroneous information is floating around out there. So if anybody is watching this on TV, if this is out on TV,
Yeah.
the report is available on the town website. There's a
Committee's website,
on the
town
committee,
page.
Yeah.
on the town page. There's an entire section devoted to the economics. I think there are 13 different scenarios that are dealt with in the report.
Yeah, that's,
I would recommend that residents read at least the 4-page executive summary to get some sense as to what actually is being proposed here. And I would also like to point out that this is a roadmap. This is not a final plan. And all of the determinations moving forward are to move from the roadmap to getting to design, build, whatever we determine, and a final plan.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Yeah, well, I'd just like to say thank you to everybody. This is on your time, and I know you put some effort into these presentations, so it wasn't just the couple hours you spent coming out to see us tonight. There was some time putting those in, so I'd really like to show my appreciation to everybody who came out and just say thanks again. And if you have any other feedback or something, you all have my email address. And, you know, if you send something to me, I'll share everything with the committee, so.
You want copies of their pictures?
Yeah, I did, yeah. If anybody has copies of their presentations or anything else, I'd like at least one copy for the record.
Could I
And,
have one?
again, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.